Hello everybody. Today I am going to talk about instruction scheduling, conditional execution and looping in ARM7. Okay. So first of all we come to what is instruction scheduling. Basically instruction scheduling, it depends upon the implementation of pipelining and if conditional execution, it depends upon how we have to schedule an instruction so that we can smoothly execute our program, okay, or set of instructions, okay. So that depends upon the pipelining implementation, how many stage pipelining is there, how it is implemented. So if conditional execution is used as we are using it in ARM, if the condition is not met, then it is having only one cycle, using only one cycle. But if the condition is met, then uh, the instruction, how many cycles would be taken, that depends upon what is the operation which is following that condition. Okay. For example, if it is a simple add operation, add, subtract, or logical for that matter, which is performed by ALU, okay, then it will take only one cycle, provided there, even if shift operation is there, that is using immediate value. If it is again a simple arithmetic logic unit operation, but the shift it is coming through a register, then it takes two cycles. Okay, one to read from the read that shift from the register, and second for implementing that. And third is, an example is, let's say if there is a load operation, that may be LDR or that may be LDM. If it is a simple LDR, then it will take one for issuing of that LDR and two for updating, because whenever we are implementing load or store, the value which is uh, loaded, that is not reflected in the following cycle but in the next cycle. Okay. And if LDM is there, let's say I'm doing it for N words to be transferred, 32 but words to be transferred, then how many cycles it would take? It would take n plus 2. N for simple issuing of those, and 2 for updating. So the last word which is getting loaded in LDM, that is going to be updated after 2 cycles. So it will take n plus 2. So in this case, it is 4 registers, R2, R3, R4 and R5. So we are going to actually take 6 cycles in this. So I hope it is clear. This is required because we need to understand, because number of cycles, they are very, very important when we understand what is instruction scheduling. Because scheduling will depend upon how many cycles are taken by the previous instructions. So first of all, we need to understand why we need instruction scheduling. It is carried out by the compiler, and for understanding this, we are going to consider a 5-stage pipelining which is used in ARM9. In ARM7, we are using 3-stage pipeline. So for explaining the hazards, that is not suffice. So we are taking the example of ARM9 for that. So this is the 5-stage pipeline for that. Okay. In this first stage is fetch, which is simple of as it happened in ARM7 only, that is instruction opcode is fetched from the memory. Second is the decode stage, where decoding of the instruction at the source operand fetching is done. So it is different from ARM3 decode stage, in which only we could identify the operands, whether they are register operands, they are immediate operands, or what is the source. But data path was not active. We could not fetch them. But in case of 5-stage pipeline, we are able to fetch in the decode stage only. And in the execute stage, the shift and all the ALU operations, that is add, subtract, and the logical operations and the shift operations, they are carried out. Fourth stage is memory access. That is, if we need to write back the results to the memory, then it is required. And finally, the fourth stage is for the register write back. Okay. So this is about the 5 stages of the ARM9 pipelining. So if I expand it in terms of the cycles, this is what we are having. So this is reflecting my instructions, and these are the 5 stages of each instruction. So at any point of time, I will have the overlapping of these 5 stages, each stage coming from a different instruction. Okay, so this is the total time period T which was used, and now it is broken. Each stage is taken T by 5. So clock has to be faster 5 times as compared to what it used to be without this 5-stage pipelining. So I hope it is very clear with all of this. Then we move to next. Now, where is the need of this instruction scheduling? Consider this example. Let's say I'm having a set of 5 instructions: load, multiply, add, load, and again followed by a add instruction. Okay, so in this case, again I'm breaking each of the instruction implementation into the way it is moved into the pipeline. So first instruction, it is fetched, decoded, and so on. So when the decode of first instruction is taking place, the overlapping of the second instruction fetch starts, and so on. But if we pay attention here, now my multiply, it is taking 2 cycles. Okay, my multiply operation is taking 2 cycles for the execution instead of 1. So from here we can understand why did we need to understand how many cycles are taken. Okay, so we are taking 2 cycles for execute. We're considering that. Now, if you pay attention, the destination register of my multiply is R2, which is also the register which is being used as the operand for my next instruction. So when my next instruction is getting decoded, it requires the operands. So it will look for its operands from R2 and R3. But my R2 is already busy. R2 has to be written back. When would I have written my R2? Whatever is the result of multiplication, that would have been written into R2 in which cycle? Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And in 7th cycle. But we are currently on the 5th cycle. So it is not yet complete. My data of R2 is not available. So this is a big problem. So what is the problem posed by this? The problem is I cannot carry out my decode operation or the decode stage of my next instruction. As a result, my pipeline has to be stalled. So this occurrence of a phenomena or of an event which is going to uh, hinder or stop, or you can say create some problem in the execution of the smooth conduct of your pipeline or the smooth implementation of a pipeline, that is interruption. It is, rather I should use the word interruption. The interruption which is caused or they created, that is actually called a hazard. And due to hazard, my pipeline is said to be stalled. Stalled means it is not progressing further, it is stopped. Okay, and the empty slots which are created, the stages which are not getting executed, like this, and this, these are called a bubble. So bubble has been created. Okay, so this is a problem. So this is a big problem what we are facing in case of this. Okay, now I hope we are all clear about what is a hazard, what is a stall, and what is a bubble. Hazard is the interruption which stops the smooth flow or the smooth implementation of my pipeline. So that is a hazard. Due to hazard, let me move to the previous slide. Due to hazard, a stall is created. That is, my pipeline is stopped. Okay, that is a stall. And the empty stages or the vacant stages which are created, okay, stages which are not getting implemented due to the hazard are called bubbles. So bubbles are created whenever a hazard is there because we are not able to implement or carry out the next stage of the pipeline because we are not getting the operand, the availability of operand is not there. So these are hazards. Now we move to the classification of hazards. So hazards, they can be classified as a data hazard, structural hazard, or as a control hazard. Now, what is a data hazard? The example which we just saw, because my register was occupied, my operand was not available because my register was being used. Okay, so my operand source was not ready. Okay, so that is called a data hazard. It is normally occurring due to a data dependency between the two instructions. Okay, so in previous case, the data dependency was occurring between the multiply and the add instruction, because the destination register of the multiply was the source register of the add. Since this destination was not ready, by the time the operand of the add had to be fetched, there was a hazard which was introduced. Okay, so this was a data hazard. Okay, next we move on to the next classification of hazard, that is called a structural hazard. Structural hazard is actually due to the resources. For example, I have to read data from the memory. Okay, and there is only one read port for that. So I need to read, I'm already reading the data for one instruction. Let's say multiply is again going on, and take the same example. And I need to access the value of R3, because for implementing my second cycle of this multiplication, I need to fetch. Whereas my next instruction is also ready to read the data, but port is only one. So though I may be having different registers, I may not be having the that source and destination dependency between two instructions, but due to the resources, due to the hardware which is available, the port which is available for reading the data from the register file, that is already occupied by the previous instruction. So my next instruction, it cannot fetch the data. So that is a structural hazard. So structural hazard, as the name implies, is due to the structure or the hardware. Okay, so it is occurring due to the hardware resources. Then we move on to control hazards. Control hazards, they occur due to the change in the predicted control path. For example, I have a branch instruction which is getting implemented. So branch not equal. Suppose I had filled my pipeline with the conditions of not equal. Okay, to move into that loop. Okay, but my operand's current status indicates that operand is both the entities which are compared are equal. So I had now to stop the branch and take another path. So that requires what? My pipeline is stalled. The next instruction which was filled because of the predicted branch, that has to be removed, and a new instruction or the new path instructions, they have to be filled. So this is a control hazard which is occurring primarily due to change in the flow of instructions. Okay, so I hope we are clear about the three types of hazards. Hazards in itself, it is a very detailed topic which we are not going to go into the depth here, because here we are talking about instruction scheduling. So otherwise we can, it is in itself a big topic which needs to be explored, and we need to go into the detail. So that we'll do in a separate video. For now, we'll just take an introduction. So these are the hazards, three types of hazards. And to solve them, certain techniques based on either compiler, they have been mostly on the compiler, because that is easy. That makes the process easier, not adding too much of cost. They can also be implemented in hardware, but that is a costlier process. So the common techniques which are used are data forwarding, instruction scheduling, and the compiler, and loop unrolling, and so on. So we are coming back to our question, that is why instruction scheduling. Now consider the same example I told you we just discussed for uh, actually seeing what a hazard is, for understanding what a hazard is. So in this case, earlier what did I have? I just moved to the instruction or the slide. Uh, yes, this slide. So in this, what was the order of the instructions? It was a load, multiply, add, then again load and add. So this multiply and add had the dependency. So now what I'm going to do? I'm going to change the order of my instructions here. You can see here I have a load, I have a multiply. But instead of having the add here, I'm having the next load which was there and the next add which was there. So the instruction which was here, it has been moved to this point last. I've made it my fifth. So what is the advantage of this? Advantage is again my multiply is taking two instructions, okay, two cycles to implement. But now my next instruction in the schedule, that is LDR R5 with some address which is pointed out by R6. I need not use R2. So my this instruction which is next is not having any dependency on the multiply instruction. So it is free. So my fetch is happening. My decode of this is going to happen. I think it has some problem. So my decode should also come here. So it is going to decode, it is going to execute and so on. Similarly, my next instruction, okay, that is add. Now it is using which R7 as the destination, R5 and R4 as the operands. Okay, again, it has no dependency on R2, R1 and R3 and this is getting well executed. So again, it can be fetched, add can be fetched during this cycle. It can be decoded during this cycle and finally executed here. So what I have done, I have removed the dependency between the two instructions which was happening between multiply and by rescheduling or restructuring my set of instructions. So this is called instruction rescheduling and it strongly depends upon the implementation of my pipeline and the knowledge has to be there about how many cycles are taken by implementation of each instruction. So in this case, no bubble is formed. So this is what instruction scheduling is and what is the need of instruction schedule. I hope it is clear. Okay. Similarly, we have data forwarding. Data forwarding is another technique in which I can directly forward my result from the execute stage to the decode stage of another. For example, I needed my R2 here. Okay, the source here was R2 operand. So instead of waiting for this to be written back in the seventh cycle, I could have directly instructed my execute unit to move to the decode stage here. So this is called my data forwarding. So these are the two simple techniques which are used. Rest we'll cover them in the separate video and which will uh, understand hazards in detail. Okay. Next we come to its conditional execution. Now what is conditional execution? We all understand that ARM is going to work on conditional execution where we have a set of uh, conditions which is there which can be suffixed with any instruction and it can be used. So we have 4 bits in every instruction from 31 to 27, 28, 31, 30, 29 and 28. So the upper 4 bits of any 32-bit instruction are reserved for the condition. So that gives me 16 conditions which are possible in ARM7 where 000 stands for always and 111 is reserved. Okay. So rest of the codes 0001 or whatever they are given to instructions actually, conditions actually. Let's say EQ is going to have some conditional code that may be 0001. Okay, that is just an example. Not equal may get some another conditional code. So our ARM does support conditional execution, but here we are making use of branch for carrying out the conditional execution. So it is not always necessary that we make use of branching. We can carry out the conditional execution by simply implementing the conditions along with our instructions without needing branch. Now that is always an advantage we can see through this example. For example, I'm comparing the value 5, okay, and if the value is equal to 5 in R0, so if R0 is 5, then I will move to the set of instruction and if it is not equal to 5 then I'll move to another set of instructions. Okay. So I have taken help of branching. So if it is equal, I will go to bypass. If it is not equal, I'll move to these set of instructions. Now same thing can be implemented by this piece of code. Again, I'm using the compare for compare instruction, which is going to compare the contents of R0 to R5. After that, it is going to evaluate the 4 flags of ARM7, that is carry flag, zero flag, the sign flag and the overflow flag. So they are being checked for the condition. But now instead of implementing equal condition is a branch, I have implemented this equal condition as a condition suffix with my add only. So the two instructions which were following, I have implemented the condition along with that. So what was it doing? If R0 was equal to 5, I was going to bypass. If it's not equal to 5, I was jumping to add and subtract. So same here I've done. Instead of branch, I have directly implemented or appended any condition with add. So it means if it is not equal, then only my add operation would be implemented. Similarly, if my this condition is not equal, then only my subtract would be implemented. So this has reduced the size of the code, and it has also made it faster because I have overcome branching. Branch in itself, it takes minimum 3 cycles, whatever. Okay, so I have actually reduced that. It is only comparing 1 cycle for that. Okay, 1 cycle for add and 1. So all, I'm taking only 3 cycles for this code. Whereas for this code, it is 1 cycle for compare, 3 for branch, and 2 for each of these. So that was taking 6 cycles. So I've actually reduced the number of cycles. So the rule of thumb for using conditional execution instead of branching is that if the conditional sequence is 3 instructions or less, that is, if I'm able to achieve my conditional execution in 3 instructions or less, it is better to use conditional execution with instructions than a branch. The logic for this 3 instruction is simple because branch takes minimum 3 cycles for implementation. So if I'm able to carry out the same conditional execution without branch, I can save on 3 cycles in my program. So that is the logic behind. So the simple analogy which can be helpful for this is, let's say if I had to implement this condition, that is, this is logical AND between A and B. So it tells that when it is not logical AND of A and B, that means when both A and B are not true, I require A also to be true, B also to be true. And when it is not true, it means it can be the case when A is not true, B is not true, or both are not true. That can be simply equated by this condition that A is not true or B is not true, which will cater to the case that either or both of them are not true. Similarly, this is the analogy of or and. Okay, so this simple logic, it is quite useful in implementing conditional execution without branch instruction. Okay, hope it is clear. So that was all for today. And looping, if I talk about looping is simple. We make use of loop, which is there. Um, any name, any label is going to be there. So it supports both conditional and unconditional looping. Looping is controlled normally by just like jumping to a subroutine, as we had seen in the case of this branch example. So this is simply indicating a loop label. Okay, so that is what your looping is, and we can have nested loops in case of ARM7. So that was all for today. I hope you liked this lecture and it was all understandable. Thank you so much.